After 1 week off, we are back. It is the Locked On Big 12 Roundtable. I am Josh Neighbors, the host of Locked On Big 12. To my right, it is John Williams, the host of Locked On Sooners. To his right, it is Steven Simcox, the host of Locked On Horned Frogs. Below him, it is Linda Godfrey, the host of Locked On Pokes. And then to her left, it is Jake Hatch, the host of Locked On Cougars. Dave Aranda gets an extension at Baylor. We're going to discuss that. Also, Luke Fickell getting his extension as well. And then we're going to discuss who had a better season, the NFL or college football. All that coming up on today's show.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, once again, we are back. Week off last week because I had what many football coaches on television always call the virus, the COVID. That's always the funniest thing ever. Like Mark Richt is always like, yeah, the virus. It's just really weird and funny to watch them say that. But yes, I am back. I am fully healthy. We are all back. So the big news today is that Dave Aranda got his extension. Now, we heard this was coming for a while. And, Steven, you're kind of most familiar with Baylor, just kind of, being in that area and covering them. And I want you to talk about, the extension, but also like how private schools just kind of inherently the information really is not there as much for public kind of grasping as it is, for an OU or an Oklahoma State, right? So kind of describe to us what you're hearing, what the numbers might be, and just, your thoughts on the extension for Dave Aranda.
Right. So we're looking at an extension through 2029, which is seems longer than most of these end up being. But I know it's sort of all just like weird numbers that are arbitrary in a way. But that's the number that he is linked to right now. And I saw Matt Mosley today, who works at the station I used to work at and is a Baylor grad. He's pretty plugged in. And he said that Steve Sarkisian is making roughly $5.2 million. Mike Gundy makes around $4.9 million. That was in 2021. Baylor does not disclose financial details, but he believes Aranda's new salary is likely in that range. So kind of, $5 million to $5.5 million. That's where they sort of settled. And I mean, it's a big deal. Like I would say all fan bases are like this, right? But Baylor fans were very defensive about when his name came up multiple times in a lot of different openings. No, he's staying here. And I do think like what little we know about him, he seems very thoughtful. He seems very family-oriented, pretty private. So the smaller town, private school, slower pace is a good fit for him. And obviously, like all those things are good qualities when you're winning games. Like all those personality traits, people love it when you're winning a Big 12 title. So coming off a huge season, they get that extension done. I think the thing that impressed me the most about Dave was they went 2-9 in 2020. Or 2-8, however many games they ended up playing. But, I mean, it did not work, right? Like he had Larry Fedora and Jorge Munoz sort of as co-offensive coordinators, and that was a disaster. And he sort of on the fly was like, okay, this doesn't work. I'm totally scrapping this. He didn't say, let's run it back and see if, things work better in better circumstances. He just went ahead and made a change. And I feel like Jeff Grimes is a huge part of this. And him keeping that staff together is going to be a big deal. With Grimes and Eric Mateos, and then Ron Roberts, who's a longtime defensive coordinator and has done a nice job for him in the 2 seasons he's been in Waco. But, I mean, they're set up pretty well at the moment. I know they're recruiting well for 2023. They're pretty highly ranked. A lot of that this early in the process is just kind of based on how many commits you have. But they got a good thing to sell. And we've sort of discussed this, like different teams that feel like they have an opportunity once Texas and OU exit to be sort of the big dog. And I think there's a lot of schools that have an argument for that. But if you're talking about on the field right now, I mean, it's hard to argue with what Baylor did in 2021.
John, I'm going to ask you about what you think is going to happen here in next season. I know Baylor has lost a good amount, but it's my expectation that OU is going to be the preseason favorite to win the Big 12. Past that, I really don't know a whole lot of what's going to happen. So to you, is covering OU, who do you see as the biggest threat? Do you think Texas, with kind of all this talent that they've got, is the biggest threat, or is Baylor retaining their coach, and also big thing too is retaining their other coaches, most of the other coaches too, right? Keeping Grimes, keeping Mateos, keeping all those guys in house, like that's huge for them. Do you see them as a bigger threat, or do you see Texas because of the amount of talent?
I think I see Baylor as a bigger threat right now. I still see Oklahoma State as more of a threat than Texas until we see what they're putting on the field with a guy getting his first run as a starting quarterback in college football. I still see Texas as a threat in the Red River Showdown, but as far as like contending for the Big 12, I'm not sure they're quite ready to do that just yet. But Baylor, I mean, they're bringing back the thing that's their bread and butter, right? Their defense, their offensive line, good offensive play caller, and they've got a quarterback that's got experience that's going to be back, and his backup has experience now too. So they're a team that's pretty well set up to make another run at the Big 12 title. I think they might be due for a little bit of regression, but I think it's still going to be a really, really good football team.
Yeah, I thought about this today. Like the crazy part about this year's Baylor team was the fact that it's the most Baylor thing ever, like, especially this group. They're about defense and running the ball, and their best running back was a converted linebacker to show you kind of the defensive angle, which is the really weird, funny part about it. Linda, what's your feeling kind of as a team that is in the Big 12? We'll go to Jake after this to get as a kind of somebody coming into the Big 12, but as one of the schools in the Big 12 already with Oklahoma State. All right, I mean this kind of sets the stage, right? I think Oklahoma State after their performance this year, Baylor, I know TCU, wants to get up there, but as the schools that are in the Big 12, this kind of sets the stage. That's going to be something to have to reckon with, right? Dave Aranda at Baylor, as you think about the new kind of power players in the new Big 12.
Absolutely. And like Steven said, Jeff Grimes he was a huge component, in my opinion, to Baylor's success this season.
Mm-hmm.
Just really everything that they did to rebuild that team and get right back in the mix of everything. And to win the Big 12 is mind-boggling. I don't know how you don't extend your coach after that. You kind of have to, a bit like Zach Taylor in the NFL right now. I don't know that Zach Taylor is as good of a coach as their record indicates, but he's going to get that extension because he got that team to a place they hadn't been in a very long time. And I think that's a smart thing to do. If it's working, get it done. And they did exactly what they needed to do to stay in contention in the Big 12.
Yeah, and then I mean, the Jeff Grimes component's huge. I think the big key for that part of it is it's not going to be something that happens. He's going to get replaced pretty soon, right? I think we've seen enough Jeff Grimes, and you got a front row seat to this, Jake. We saw it already at BYU. We just saw it at Baylor with, I won't say scraps, but it wasn't great, especially what we saw in 2020. So they're going to have to replace that. But as somebody coming in to the Big 12, and also seeing Luke Fickell get the extension, like I know people think this league might be wide open, but it feels like they're going to be some powerhouse coaches, at least some established coaches. Aranda, Fickell, Gundy, Sataki. I mean, these aren't just kind of the hot risers. This isn't G5, right? These are well-paid, well-known commodities who have been coaching for a while. They're going to be ahead of these programs.
And that's the thing about this is these new programs coming in. UCF just locked up Gus Malzahn long-term. Mm-hmm. BYU took care of Kalani Sitake and his assistants. Luke Fickell's the most recent. They're committing $10 million at the University of Cincinnati now to both the head coach and the coaching staff leading the Bearcats. These programs, I think, understand the level that they're going into, and they're trying to spend commensurate with getting in there and competing right away. We'll see if it actually works out that way. I still think that all of them are probably going to have some sort of a adjustment period where they have to get used to playing the level of football that these other programs have been playing at for literally decades. But I think these programs understand the financial commitment they have to make. I'm actually impressed that Baylor put up what they put up, apparently, to take care of Dave Aranda. I'm with you on the Jeff Grimes thing. The reason why he went to BYU be the offensive coordinator is because he has a dream of being a head coach. Mm-hmm. He's not going to be long for Waco, but in the time that he's going to be there, Dave Aranda found a good one.
Yeah, he did. It felt like if there was some Auburn movement, we might have been having a conversation about him. Yeah. Because with his desire to want to go to that next level. Mm-hmm. And also the one guy, we didn't mention too, the first school out of that new four to really commit, Dana Holgorsen, right? I mean, Houston ponied up for Dana Holgorsen and they found that success. I mean, it was a little rocky there, but last year, they won 12, 13 games, an awesome season for them. So I want you all to assume that 14 teams in the Big 12 right now, all right? So let's just say OU and Texas are in, and the new 4 schools are in, which is it's probably going to be a likely scenario, at least we think for one season here, maybe in the next 2 years. Who is the best coach in the Big 12? If next year we're to have all 14 teams there. All right. Who is the best coach in the Big 12? Steven, I'm going to go to you first.
Oh, man, this is a great question. I'll take Luke Fickell, and I know that you're dealing with him doing it in the American Conference, but still getting to the playoff with that team and sustaining like a couple years now of extended success in Cincinnati, I think is a big deal. He's also recruited well. He's developed well. I think he checks all the boxes. I'll take Luke Fickell.
All right, John.
Yeah, Luke Fickell seems like a really good choice. I'll throw a nomination in there for Mike Gundy as well. Just what he's able to do with the, how do I put this kindly, the level of quarterback play that they've had at Oklahoma State for quite a while now. And, they haven't always been the power player in the Big 12, but every few years they jump up there and they put themselves into contention. And, I don't necessarily like everything about the guy, but I think he's a really, really good coach. And I think this is just one of those things, like the Big 12 is going to have a deep roster of coaches if they can hold on to all these guys, which is really impressive for a school or for a conference that a lot of people, national media included, think it's maybe like the 4th or 5th best conference. That coaching roster, you could put up against any conference in America, I feel like.
Yeah, I want to say this before Jake and Linda, like I'm thinking about them compared to the Pac-12 right now. Like the depth at the top is higher. At the top programs, the Pac-12, you've got Lincoln Riley, right? Dan Lanning's at Oregon. Kyle Whittingham is awesome, but I mean, also, how long is it going to be around for? We don't think it's going to be very long, right? And you think about, Chip Kelly at UCLA, okay, but they really haven't been that good. Washington State obviously just went through their coaching change. Washington making a coaching change. Like the coaches in this Big 12 are better. And I know people are saying, look, it could end up being a G5 league. I'm going to reiterate this. They're paying these coaches very, very well. And especially, like we talked about, at those new 4 teams coming in, they're all paying their coaches very well to come into this league. So I just think that should be known.
I mean, politics is the biggest reason why some of these schools weren't Power 5 schools to begin with. Like Houston had an opportunity to be a part of the Big 12. Cincinnati was a part of the Big East. Like that was once a power conference in college football. Like these aren't schools that are just also rans. UCF had a great season just a few years back. BYU is consistently a thorn in the side of the teams that they play. And
the Pac-12 this year.
Yeah, the Pac-12 in particular. Like these teams aren't, just some average teams that are coming into the Big 12. I mean, as far as schools that the Big 12 could have added, they added 4 of the best, group of 5 schools.
And well coached.
Yeah. Well coached in great areas, great fan bases, and great donor bases as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and I know it's not the most important thing, but you could also argue that the conference is getting better and deeper in basketball also. So it's not like you're going to fall off a cliff like at the end of the fall into the winter and into March Madness. So the 2 revenue sports, you're set up really well.
Yeah. Linda, who do you think is to be the best coach in the Big 12 next year?
I think we can all assess my answer from my reaction to John's answer, but I fully believe Mike Gundy. And listen, I have complaints about Mike Gundy too. I'm not saying that every season I'm like, he makes all the right decisions every time. By no means. He's able to do with 2- and 3-star recruits regularly, year in and year out, and win games and come out with winning seasons does not, in my opinion, get the respect that it deserves. I think he is the most, decorated coach, the most vetted coach in the Big 12 right now, with the chance to be the best coach next season.
All right, Jake.
I was going to say Mike Gundy, so I'm going to go. I'll find somebody else, and I'll actually throw up a name that, man, I go back and forth on this, but Kalani Sitake, I'm going to toot the horn for BYU out here. Kalani understands the unique dynamics of BYU better than anybody because he grew up a fan of the university. He played here. He's a member of the sponsoring faith, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints out here. He knows what BYU is all about, and he has proven that he can have them competing at a national level, being an independent. The hope is that as he goes into the Big 12 now with his understanding of what it took to get Utah to being competitive in the Pac-12, he'll have BYU up and running relatively quickly. We'll see. But I was going to say Mike Gundy. I just figured I'd throw somebody else out there.
Nobody thinks Lance Leipold. Talk about credentials. Guy won 2 games at Kansas. I mean, come on.
Texas.
I mean, yeah,
Turned Buffalo into a MAC power. Come on.
Yeah.
What's surprising to me about this is that Matt Campbell didn't get brought up when, like, 6 months ago, probably most people considered him one of the 2 best coaches in the conference.
So I think look, it's tough because he's done such a great job program building, but like, I think there is a certain level. And look, I knocked Gundy for this last year because all we heard about with the 2020 Oklahoma State team was, oh, Chuba Hubbard's back. Tylan Wallace is here. This defense is going to be good. And they severely underperformed. Now they rebounded so well, and Iowa State could do the same. But the thing was, this was the year, right, for Iowa State. This was the season with the talent that they had. And they came up way, way short of expectations. So while we might see him as this awesome program builder and coach, I mean, I think the reason why we're all gravitating towards a Mike Gundy is that, he's had all this success. I would say at this point in time, I would roll with Luke Fickell. And I will say the reason is because the last 2 seasons, like, I don't think people understand, them going to the playoff does not happen without their last season. Yeah. They basically had to be damn near perfect for 2 years. And with the amount of pressure they had on them this year to be as good as they were and to run it wire to wire and to get that win against Notre Dame on the road, which they had to have to make that statement and still get doubted and still win every single week, and most times impressively, that to me is like coaching. Like, that is just, I kept this group focused from pillar to post because they had this amazing opportunity. And also too, like, there's a couple bounces in that. I'm not saying they win the Alabama game. That game's a lot closer, right? And they didn't get absolutely curb stomped in that game. It was not. We've seen worse blowouts. We saw one in the game afterwards, right? Georgia and Michigan. So to have that season with that much pressure and just kind of for them to retain him, like, is awesome. I think he is a top level coach. I really do. So there's a lot of different matters of thought. And that's what makes this so interesting is that one of you guys could have answered Dave Aranda. And I actually think in 3 or 4 years, we might be sitting here being like, this was the obvious choice. Right. And Steven, you know this too. Baylor's last like decade or so, the sneaky thing I know that we talk about is they win with variety of coaches. They won with Bryles, they won with Matt Rule, and they won with Dave Aranda. So while there's been a lot of variation, like, that's a great spot to be in. And I think the fact they've locked up that guy, like, talk about Family Guy, I think it's, pretty well documented. He's a Christian. Like, it's a fit it's a match kind of made in heaven. And we've already seen him put together a awesome season. So I think we could all be sitting here be wrong in 3 years and be like, how do we not all say Dave Aranda?
Yeah, and I mean, you can't do this obviously, but if you take out the 1-11 year that they had the first year under Rule and the 2-8 season under Dave, I mean, they've been consistently in bowl games, in contention for Big 12 title for, I mean, the past decade plus, which is super rare for that university. So they have like elevated facilities and elevated the talent there to a place where, I mean, they're pretty consistent. They're about as consistent as anyone in the league.
And they're going to put guys in the NFL too. I mean, I think if you're a defensive player, right, and you see what's going to happen this year with Jalen Petrie, and then I think also, in my opinion, Terrell Bernard too, and then eventually Apoika, it's going to be a pretty coveted place. All right, let's hit a quick word from our sponsors here. Then we'll ask the question of who had a better season, NFL or college. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. You guys can go to built.com today. That's built.com and check out the line of Built Bars they've got right now. Mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. Oh my goodness. Most Built Bars have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. So you guys can get that right now in all those flavors too. And they're always coming out with new flavors. Also, go to built.com today. It's built.com. Promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com today. All right, so I thought about this today where all my great ideas come up in the shower. I mean, I'm always thinking about podcast ideas in the shower. So I was like, man, we have a varied crowd here. We got a lot of NFL interest. We got a lot of college football interest. We got a lot of kicker interest. I know one of us here just loves kickers so much. Made me think, who had the better season? And you guys can interpret better however you want to. Did you guys enjoy it more? Do you think the quality of football was better? Were the storylines better? Was all of it better? But I know it's a college show here, but we all follow pro pretty closely. Did the NFL or did college football have a better season? So, John, I'll go to you first. I know your team's season didn't end well, but I see more of your NFL tweets than anybody else I know. So, and you're always fending off angry Cowboys fans. They're coming at you from all angles. Yeah. So, what did you think? College football better season, NFL better season?
Oh man, if we can include December as part of the college football season, even though the senior season was over, except for the Alamo Bowl, then I think like storylines, there was nothing more fascinating than what happened in college football this year. It was incredible. Not just Lincoln Riley moving to USC, but you had Brian Kelly going to LSU. You had Mario Cristobal going to Miami, like making Miami relevant again. That could potentially be a thing in the ACC. Just the Cincinnati run, Georgia's defense that was so dominant, and everybody just kept looking for a team to potentially put some points on them beating Alabama in the college football playoff. Like there was so much interest in it. And yes, my Dallas Cowboys season didn't end the way I wanted it to. I still enjoyed it, although there was a lot more frustration. Like I enjoyed the college football season more than I've ever enjoyed it, I think. And that was when Oklahoma was playing a close game every single week. Just the overall season, it was just a lot of fun to watch this year.
Steven.
Yeah, I think I'm just suffering from recency bias here because John laid out a lot of really great things that happened. And it's hard to compete with college football because there's so many storylines and so many stories within a season. But the NFL playoffs were just so good. I mean, it was just game after game.
The Chiefs-Bills game was
the Chiefs-Bills game was an instant classic. And then, I mean, the follow-ups weren't to that level, but they were still, the AFC and NFC championship games were great. I mean, Chiefs-Bengals was an amazing game. Rams-Niners wasn't like there weren't a ton of fireworks, but it was another close game. In the Super Bowl, I mean, you had a well-played, super competitive football game. So I think the NFL, even though they rarely are able to get out of their own way, especially from a PR perspective, I feel like they had a really great year just on the field. And if that was my first thought when you said who had the better season, I was just thinking about the entertainment value of the games. And I think college football, there was some parity, right? Like we did see Cincinnati break through, but at the end of the day, it was still Alabama and Georgia. And it was nice to see Georgia get it done, but it was mostly the usual suspects. And in the NFL, I mean, we got Bengals-Rams, which was a cool matchup. So I'll go with the Shield in this matchup.
corporate Simcox over there with the pick. All right, Linda.
Oh, I hate this question because like people ask you it all the time. Oh, if you had to pick one, would you watch college football or NFL? And I love them both for like wholly different reasons. College football makes me feel warm and fuzzy, and I feel like they're legitimately playing for each other. Whereas like in the NFL, I'm like, yeah, but you're getting like $20 million a year, or a game when you get into the playoffs. So I think of that as more like a skill set situation where it's fun to watch Aaron Donald run a guy into his own quarterback or Cooper Kupp absolutely torch Eli Apple in the Super Bowl. But the storylines in college football that are guys playing for each other or coaches, monkeys biting children is just so much more fun and like heartwarming. Not the biting the monkey, like not the biting of the child actually, but the stories that come from it are great. So I can't in good conscience pick one. I like them both a whole lot.
I think the words heartwarming and monkey biting child were used in like either the same sentence or consecutive sentences.
There was a comma, so I think it's fine.
The heartwarming story of a coach's stripper girlfriend and her exotic animal.
It's a fun story. I think
it's why we love the
and
sport.
Heartwarming.
I think there's a Hallmark movie about it.
Hey, Linda, I thought about you when Joe Burrow pass fell incomplete and Evan McPherson didn't get a chance to hit a game-tying field goal. Like, you were the first person that came to my mind because I knew you were wearing an Evan McPherson shirt.
I thought about Linda when they showed Evan McPherson out there for the halftime show.
At the halftime show?
People were like, "What's he doing?" I'm like, "Do you not go to games? Like, the special teamers are always out there like 50, like it's like 5 minutes into halftime, and they always come out there and start like they don't need to be in the halftime huddle. What strategic information is the coach going to give the kicker? Like, no, go out there and warm up.
Then, right after listening to Eminem drop "Lose Yourself," he went out and hit a record-tying field goal to tie Adam Vinatieri's record. So, let him listen to his music. He was clearly like, I don't know. The Super Bowl was fantastic. Both teams clearly having the time of their life up until, of course, the last couple of seconds. But
yeah, the football was bad for a little bit, but yeah, I did enjoy. I enjoyed the matchup. Jake, your thoughts on this question?
So, I love the storylines that college football has, and annually just it continues, I feel like, to outperform. But this year, in just this instance, you can see behind me, I've got my little poster of the catch for the 49ers behind me. I was hate watching the Niners just because I've had that poster for many, many years, but the thing that the NFL had this year was their postseason was unlike any NFL postseason that I can remember in my life. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I got to give the tip of the cap to the NFL this year, but annually, I feel like by and large, college football seems to dominate. But man, I was hate watching to see what Jimmy G was going to do, if he was going to make me eat all of my words about wanting him out in San Francisco. And the Rams and the Bengals having new blood annually in the NFL this year. It felt like just, man, I'm with Steven. Got to give the nod to the Shield this year, unfortunately.
I will say the college storylines and how long it persisted was really the amazing part, because even up to like the second signing day, we had Jimbo Fisher doing this ridiculous comedy routine where he's like, "Why are they slandering our coaches? We worked so hard for this class." And it's like, dude, the jig is up. You can just come out and all you have to say is, we have an awesome coaching staff and we have people who really care and want to support our players in this community and support them as football players, which is awesome. That's all you have to say. NIL is legal now. You don't have to be like, "Oh, name, image, and likeness. We would never." Oh, what is like? What in the hell? I was baffled. I was like, "What are we watching here?" Because like I was like, check the rule book. It's allowed right now, correct? Why is he putting up this act? Like, whatever he's doing. Lane Kiffin's comments were weird too, but the potential. I mean, we just had an almost coup of a coach who was in Mexico that started by message board rumors with boosters who clearly wanted the coach out. And this coach is going to come back and coach the next season, which feels completely untenable with Brian Harsin at Auburn, but it's going to happen. And so I think why college wins this year is that even when games weren't being played, the storylines kept going. I mean, usually by mid January and early February, football guys are having a tough time generating conversations, right? That was not a problem. Like, generating college football content and conversations was not a problem because coaches are just ridiculous people as it's currently right now. They always will be, but college coaches are just it's a really difficult job. So I think you have to be kind of crazy to do it, but like, they are next level crazy. And so I think that fed into these storylines that kept going. And then obviously we had Caleb Williams watch, which continued on forever. And as I mentioned, signing days were interesting too. So I think from an overall story perspective, I would say I want to go with college football. Now, in the end, were the results as good? I actually don't think the Super Bowl and the National Championship were as entertaining as they ended up ultimately were in the end. I don't think the end parts of the game were actually representative, like the entire game. I didn't think they were great football games, but the results were pretty cool, right? The Rams were not an underdog by any large stretch of the imagination, but it was great to see Matthew Stafford, who's on a bunch of crappy teams, and Aaron Donald, and some people like to see it, OBJ win, whatever. And then also Georgia's a powerhouse, but it was great to see them get over the hump with a guy who looks like, he drives golf carts over at your local country club. So that is, I think, the stories were fun on both sides. I'm just going to go with the college football stories because they were a lot more ridiculous, and I'm a fiend for that kind of stuff. So, anybody have any thoughts on that as we kind of go through this here?
Yeah, I mean, I got started covering the NFL and covering the Dallas Cowboys. Like that's where most of my Twitter following comes from.
Right.
But now they're getting inundated with college football tweets because I just had so much fun watching college football this year. The NFL, I think some of the things that really got to me about the NFL season was how much officiating became a part of it.
Yeah.
And I'm very much keep it in your pants officials, like quit throwing flags, let people play, and just let the game be the game. So many times you're seeing 10, 11, 15 penalties, on a team or combined, and it just takes away from like.
So did you enjoy the T. Higgins no call? You thought that was they should just let that one?
I mean, there's some that are absolutely blatant. Absolutely, I get it, but they're like they say you could call pass interference, you could call holding on every single snap. And I prefer games that aren't getting over officiated. And I felt like the NFL just had a ton of over officiated games this year.
Also, we didn't need the extra week. Like, was anybody like, yes, week 18? Like, no, thank God.
I was pretty over it.
Yeah. Even though my team was going to the playoffs, I was just kind of like, eh.
I was like, yeah, this is like nobody. And the thing that, I mean, nobody except for the 32 owners asked for it, right? Nobody was like, yes. You know what? We need week 18. We need that 17th game to figure out who's better, who should be in the playoffs. Now, it did provide us with that amazing moment with the Chargers and the Raiders, right? But like nobody, I did not have. There was no exciting football to me that entire weekend until that game actually started, which is not good, and it really kind of defeats the purpose of that. But I digress. I think I will say this: if we do get college football playoff expansion, like I think the answer might become pretty easily that, because it's going to be absolutely ludicrous if we do end up getting that. But yeah, I think each season there was excitement. This just shows you why football is king, right? There are arguments for both sides of this, and we were all here enthralled by each of them, and it just kind of shows you how much it controls it. All right. One more quick word from our sponsors, and we'll get everybody out of here. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline and BetOnline.net. Just because the big game is over, friends, does not mean the sports action stops. If you guys want to get in on the Olympics, if you guys want to bet on that Russian speed skater who cheated, I would suggest it. She's pretty damn good, apparently. You can go figure skater, yes.
And she didn't cheat. She was advised to take medicine by adults.
Really? We don't think the 15-year-old did it by herself?
She's a 15-year-old. If somebody tells
the Russians would never dope their athletes,
God,
John.
Yeah. Man, I'm just saying, like, they need to quit letting minors participate in the Olympics so they don't get taken advantage of like this. Sorry.
Correct.
Girl dad.
You're not wrong. Excuse me. So if you want to bet on her, I'm actually not even sure you can. Excuse me. Wow.
Sorry, BetOnline.net.
Yeah,
you're doing great. This is
just
a steroid-free podcast, guys. This is real life.
If you want to bet on the United States men's and women's hockey team, you guys can do that. UFC, boxing, all of those things. Well, I'm making this ad read. I'm sure you can bet on that as well at BetOnline.net today. You guys can go and check it out. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, everybody, it's time for plugs. John, you go first. Where can people find you and your work and all of its variety? And also, if there's any nuggets you guys just want to give, anything you guys just want to say to end the show, I feel like I should let you guys say that too. So go ahead, John.
Yeah. Hey, I like the idea of the final thoughts. This is very around the horn.
Like it's around the horn. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that show. Like there are a few things on ESPN that I really enjoy watching, but I really like that one. Even Woody Page sometimes. But no, final thoughts, man. I love the Olympics. Like there's something really cool about all these athletes just spending years of their life preparing for something that'll take place over 2-3 weeks. It's such an emotional roller coaster. Like from somebody, I did musicals in high school, and it's not at all the same, but you spend like months preparing for something that will be over in 5 days. Like you have 5 runs and then you're done. But they spend 4 years preparing for one opportunity to medal. And it's just kind of cool. Like the grind, I think that's what is impressive to me, that their ability to just grind, hoping to qualify for that. And so big shout out to all the Olympians across the world. It's just a cool experience. I almost tried out for the bobsled one time, but I had a history exam, so I wasn't able to go. They had open auditions at UNT one year. Yeah, so for more Olympic talk and girl dad takes, make sure you go subscribe to Locked On Sooners wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube as well. And for Sooners coverage, Locked On Sooners and Sooners Wire at USA Today.
Steven.
Yeah, I'm at Simcox Steven on Twitter. The show is at Locked On TCU. Podcast is Locked On Horned Frogs. And final thought, I mean, I went with the NFL, but we didn't even really – John touched on it briefly. I think the story that was the most fun in college football, Brian Kelly becoming like a fun divorced dad. I mean, he's dancing now. He's developed like a Southern accent. He looks like the type of dude that might buy beer for his kids on the weekends. Like, he's just really going all out in Baton Rouge.
Jesus.
Muted. Linda.
You just described like my dad, which is fun. My we didn't talk last week, so we didn't get to talk about the combine, and I'm still really been out of shape that Tay Martin didn't get an invite. I really think he deserved to kind of show off especially after having such a good showing at the Shrine Bowl. So still mad about that, hoping he has a really good pro day at Oklahoma State so he gets some kind of opportunity. But you can find me on Twitter at Lindellians, and all my work comes out in the Matthew Berry newsletter.
All right. And then Jake.
I'm going to follow John's lead a little bit. Russia is absolutely cheating, and Russia needs to be punished for this, but I will digress on that point. I can't understand that 6 straight Olympic games have been marred by their systematic doping. And
I don't know why they let them come anymore.
I don't
It makes no sense. It's
They're
like, hey,
competing as Russian Olympic athletes. They're no longer.
it's the Russian Olympic Committee. It's like, hey, just go. Like, all right, Russian athletes, if you guys want to go compete, go be part of a different country. But like, we're not going to let anybody under the guise of Russia come here anymore.
I don't know. But I digress on that point. But I just the Olympics. I love the Olympics, the whole idea of it and everything. It's just that part of it has just been driving me nuts. But anyways, outside of that, you can follow my coverage on BYU, Locked On Cougars, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Just search out Locked On Cougars wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want my thoughts on all things sports, follow me. I'm at Jacob C. Hatch.
I would like to say that I'm just really enthralled in the U.S. curling team right now. Team Schuster. Always
curling is fantastic. By the way,
it's pretty intense, man. It's intense. I love the way they just start screaming. It's like harder. They're soft. It's unbelievable. Love the curling. Just want to shout that out. You guys can find me on Twitter at LOBig12. You guys can find me personally at JoshNeighbors_. You guys can find the show Locked On Big 12 on YouTube and wherever you guys get your podcasts as well. All right, team. We'll see you guys next week.